I'm Christian Escobar. I'm the president of the Coronado Roundtable. Welcome everybody to another program. We're very excited this morning to have a special program and speaker with Jim Kidrick, the president and CEO of the San Diego Air and Space Museum. So before we launch into the program itself, I'd like to ask you to rise and join me in pledging the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As you know, our programs are recorded live for Zoom, and for that, the library has acquired new microphones, so the audio portion of all of that should be much improved. And for that, we thank the Coronado Public Library and its staff, and especially this morning, and as usual, Selena Dulid, who is sitting in the back, running the program. For those viewing at home, please mute your computer or device, and please turn off your camera. You may use your chat box for the Q&A portion of the program, which will come later. And for those of you in the room, please silence your mobile phones. Please let us know also if you have problems hearing the program in the back of the room. And we do have coffee this morning, and it's here available for you, presented by Amalo Brew, the library's coffee cart service. And we do ask for a $3 donation that helps us defray our costs for the coffee, as well as all of our costs for running the programs. The Coronado Roundtable board member emeritus, retired Rear Admiral Tom Mercer, will provide the introduction to our speaker. So Tom, if you'd like to come forward. Thank you.
Well, Jim Kidrick probably needs no introduction to so many of you here, but he's been the CEO and president of the San Diego Air and Space Museum since 2007, having started with them in 2006 as the executive director. So he's widely experienced naval aviator, both the tours at Miramar in fighters and Lemoore in attack and training command in Kingsville. Over 4,500 flight hours and all those standard things. In any case, he's going to talk to us today both about the Air and Space Museum and about the what's going on in the Balboa Park. And of course, he's one of the leaders of the whole effort to enhance and upgrade Balboa Park. We served together maybe 40 years ago on Carl Vinson. He's had time after he retired from the Navy with L3 Titan and with Booz Allen, and ran the electronic warfare range at China Lake, California. That's one of his sidelights when he was before he came down here to run the museum. In the audience, we have probably 3 or 4 attack pilots, including Air Force Attack with RG. We have about 3 battle group commanders, couple carrier skippers, and a wide range of not so up-to-date information. So if something during the questions and answer period, if something has been bothering you for a long time that you'd like to know about naval aviation and ancillary forces, I'm sure there's somebody in the audience or on the board that can help answer those questions. Jim Kidrick.
Well, good morning and thanks, Tom. I really appreciate being asked to come in and talk a little bit about the Air and Space Museum. I'm going to go through two presentations very, very quickly because I don't just get asked about the museum. I get asked about Balboa Park because I think most of you hear in the news all the changes that are coming, and some of those that are already with us. Park Boulevard would be an example of that. I can tell you, we don't count very many buses during the day, or nor bicycles in the bike lanes. So when I first got to the Air and Space Museum, and I now am in my 20th year, finishing up my 20th year, we were kind of certainly a metaphor for powered flight, and I won't read all this to you because like I said, I want to go very quickly to get to both presentations, and it'll take a little time, but this is kind of, what we were at the beginning and what we represent, for the future. So, kind of when I got there also, we were kind of that priceless collection of vintage aircraft, rich regional aviation, all of those things. The building, of course, for those of you that don't know, was built for the 35-36 exposition and is the Ford building. So the building itself is very historic and actually quite cool. It's built in the shape of gears, okay, as RG would know, because he comes down routinely. And we have a mural in the museum that circles around it completely that is really the March of Transportation. So there's a lot of coolness about the museum, as well as our second restoration facility out at Gillespie Field, where we have another 30 plus airplanes. We have the Tomcat was in the second Top Gun movie. We have Baron Hilton's Stagger Wing, which is quite a beautiful airplane, probably the most famous Stagger Wing in the world today. So we have a lot of things that are of interest. Plus, we own a wind tunnel. How many people actually know we own a wind tunnel down on Pacific Highway? And we operate it today. It was built by Consolidated Aircraft back in 1944, and we continue to operate it today as a wholly owned subsidiary of the museum. So this is kind of how I would rate us as when I walked in. We were a little frozen in time. We kind of got around to, and some of you who know the museum, as you got around the circle, we kind of stopped, at Korea, to be honest. Okay, we had a MiG-15 there, we had an F-86 there, etc. So we needed to update the museum and gain some additional exhibits, especially in our airplanes, aviation and space. There weren't any reasons for repeat visits. We had an aging volunteer force. Probably the saddest thing that I experience on a routine basis is the loss of wonderful people who have dedicated their lives to making great things happen at the Air and Space Museum. Minimal engagement with the educational community, so we knew we had to change things. And I tell our team all the time, I said it just wasn't making sense, and they needed to spell it both ways. Because we were going to go out of business. Our budget today is 3.5 times larger than the budget when I got there. And so we have about 90 employees, 45 full-time, and the rest are part-time. And of course, you can see in the news, if we have to go to $25 an hour minimum wage, which we've all seen recently, we and a lot of others could certainly be in trouble. So we needed to really establish a new brand, as the Air and Space Museum in our region. So we changed the name. I was asked earlier why we changed from aerospace to air and space. And it was really because we didn't want to indicate that we were necessarily the aerospace industry, that we wanted to be able to focus on air aviation as well as the many space programs. We've been fortunate over the years to do more honoring of the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs in any museum in the world, not just in the country. We just did one, the Legacy of Apollo, a few weeks ago. That was a huge hit. We had 97-year-old Jim Lovell there, and it's pretty exciting to see some of them because you think of Charlie Duke, Apollo 16, the youngest man to walk on the moon is now 90. And as we continue to watch the Artemis program, Artemis 1, 2, and 3, trying to get back to the moon, which is very, very important to us. You can imagine, Charlie and Jerry Griffin, one of the flight directors. We had Fred Hayes in Apollo 13 with Jim Lovell, of course. So it's very exciting when we can honor those wonderful, wonderful people who did so much, okay, because now their legacy, and this was called the legacy of Apollo, what they talked to us about were what did we gain, okay, from what they did way back then. And that's very important, certainly, as we continue into the future. So we needed to establish our budget, upgrade the professional staff. We have, like I said, about 90 employees, 200 plus volunteers. I had, on this paid parking issue, I'm going to occasionally pop in something. I had one of our volunteers come up to me the other day and said, you know, Jim, if I have to pay for parking, I'm not going to be coming anymore. And, you know, that's the reality of what's occurring here, you know, in our region. Other initiatives that we did, we wanted to focus certainly on interactivity. I think if you come to the museum now, you will find that it will be wonderfully fun, which is, you know, when you walk up to the Air and Space Museum, it says, enter here for fun. While they're having fun, we can educate them, we can incentivize them, we can excite them, we can do an awful lot, but we don't want to be boring. When I first got to the museum, the experience was about a 45-minute walk, and it was pretty boring. It was pretty quiet. And you know, I still have one of my closest friends who says, you know, every time I hear the word museum, I hear a little quiet, a little dusty, and so now you can come in easily and spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours and not have seen it all. And of course, for some people, it's the treat of being able to go down to our basement where we're building a Hughes H1 racer right now, you know, from scratch. And this is just a side story. We can't always find something to restore. So, you know, we built the Boeing P-26, the Pea Shooter, and RG knows all this. We are building the Hughes H1 racer down the basement. We built the Bell X1, which you see as soon as you walk in the door of the museum. We built a wonderful and beautiful GB. So our team literally can build anything, and that's what makes it exciting. So as we fill those pieces of the puzzle in aviation and space history, as well as, you know, helping to vision the future for all the young people, I always say, certainly as one of the sons of the greatest generation, and that many of us in this room are children of the greatest generation. The reason we do things today is because we have to believe there are future greatest generations. And I think that's what keeps us motivated to ensure that the country maintains some degree of alignment. Is that too political, Tom? Okay. I was told I couldn't be very political, so I just want to be very careful here. So, defining and fulfilling community needs. We were actually the first aviation organization ever accredited by the American Alliance of Museums. That was back in 1987. We went through a reaccreditation about 14, 15 years ago. We're going to do one again right now. We're ready for our peer review. We are one of the few museums that is AAM accredited here in the San Diego region. Of the 33,000 plus museums in the United States, only just about 1,100 are actually AAM accredited. So it's a credit that we wear quite proudly. And of course, we're a Smithsonian affiliate, and you know, we do all that kind of stuff that we think is very, very important. Initiatives, best business practices. These are things we had to incorporate that just didn't exist. Everyone in this room that I know, okay, Lee Cargill, who when I was a junior officer flying A7s, you know, was trying to teach me everything, and I just wasn't learning as I should have, I guess. But yeah. Yeah, you don't want to ask too many questions of a few people in this room, but it's the realization that we just didn't have a lot of those things that all of us would consider very basic now, and that we should have. You know, Tim. I worked with Tim over at Booz, and Tim was quite honestly one of the nicest guys. He was, because you know, when I got over there, you were looking for people like him, because he was pretty senior in the ranks coming over to them to be able to help you out, because I wanted to do that REMS. You remember the Rapid Response Emergency Management System? I still have that, by the way. You and Hugh Butt. So we want to be viewed as a resource. Certainly, My dad used to tell me as a kid, that if you want to succeed in life, just make sure you're always a resource for your friends. And I still believe that's very true. I tell people, if you want your car painted, you call a guy named John Teska, 619-520-9910, and tell him Jim sent you. So we try to be that. And I think that most who contact the San Diego Air and Space Museum find that to be true. We wanted certainly to establish many partnerships. School in the Park program, which we're a member of, is very successful, supported by the Price Charities. And so we have kids with us during the school year in the museum every year. And it's a very, very exciting program. We just got the summary. And sometimes when you're in my role, you don't get to see all the day-to-day. So I got the debrief from the principal of the school, the primary, Annie Bosler, who kind of supports the program for Robert Price. And they were glowing in their, rating of us. And sometimes, you don't, I was so glad to hear that because I'm sitting with our education director, our COO, and it was just good to hear that our team is continuing to succeed, because those are the programs that make a significant difference for some of those underserved young men and women that live in our community. We're at just over $1.1 million now in awarded scholarships as of June 12th. And a very exciting program. Whenever I assign people or I ask them if they'll join our scholarship committee, I think the only way they leave the scholarship committee is they die. It's just, no, I mean, it's one of those. They're having so much fun interviewing the young people of today and seeing if we can help them out. Interactive programs continue. We've got, great simulators, video tours, aero-themed technical design competitions. We try to establish many things like Space Day and Family Days so we can bring them in together. We needed to reestablish, of course, our relevance. Why are we important? I think if you do an overlay of the history of aviation and space to the overlay of technology in general, you'll find that December 17, 1903 was a big moment in technology. And you figure that, 122 years later, look what we're now flying in aviation and in space. So, I believe that there are some major milestones in technology, which, like I said, coincide, with the major milestones in aviation and space, because, World War I, and sometimes we hate to say it, but during wartime, we see a lot of improvements in certain things. And we certainly saw in World War I growth in aviation. Then you have, of course, May 20, 1927, Lindbergh crosses the Atlantic solo, one of the greatest movies of all time. Remember that one? Jimmy Stewart starring in the Lindbergh story. And when people had died trying, Amelia Earhart does it 5 years to the day later. October 1447, Yeager, breaks the sound barrier in the Bell X-1 when most people thought it was, especially the Air Force guys, right, RG? Okay, that it was never going to happen. That just wasn't going to be possible. And of course, it just got better from there. And of course, 69, we're walking on the moon. Last man walks on the moon in 72, and we're struggling to get back there. So sometime, if you want a brief, I'll brief you on what we see in what I call the commercials, the SpaceX, the Blue Origin and Bezos, and what they're doing. If they weren't doing what they're accomplishing now, we'd be way behind. And I think the general opinion is we got to get back to the moon. We got to get into deep space, prove we can live there before we take that 6 to 8 month trip to Mars. Mars is it isn't impossible, but it's going to be something that's significant. This is one of the slides that I just kept in here over the years because it kind of talks about, engineering and technology and what China is doing compared to us. Now, this slide's probably 12 or 13 years old, but it still really applies. The controversy about American universities, foreign students. I'm not giving an opinion one way or the other, but I have to believe at some level, when they go home, they take something with them. And certainly that should be very concerning for us with the international challenges that we all have as nations. A flight plan for the future. We want to lead those next greatest generations, and I truly believe this, that we can make a difference, and that's what we're trying to do. Certainly at the Air and Space Museum, when we talk about STEM, certainly, I think there's kind of a byword, and it's innovation. It's getting out there and being creative, which I think is, probably. When you guys were looking at all this as JOs, Tom and Lee, you were looking for us to be innovative in what we were going to do, whether it was tactically or the technology we're going to use. Matter of fact, Lee was passing on some stories about technology from his son and how they land on carriers today. Let me tell you, it wasn't quite that way back then, as I recall. Okay. Non-traditional education excellence, that's kind of what we are. Pilot shortages still exist. Okay, they're going to exist for a while until we start continue to produce them. I'm on an advisory board to Embry-Riddle over at the Prescott campus, and you can see their flight program is really churning right now because there was a little bit of a lull. Then all of a sudden we got way behind, and so they're dedicating certainly much more of an effort towards that, and certainly because aviation is 5% of our economy, you can imagine there are real jobs in aviation and space for young people today, whether they want to be a flight director, an air traffic controller, they want to work rebuilding engines. I will stand here and tell you that every one of the pilots in this room was extremely appreciative of those people that got those airplanes ready for us every day. Okay, that we could go out and try to break them. Okay, and oftentimes we did. I think the toughest thing to learn as a JO was how to tell them what's wrong with the airplane. When you come in, well, let me see, it's kind of like this, and because in my case, because I'm 6'4", as you can see, when I was a young guy, 24, 25 years old, I looked like I was 16. So I'm convinced that when I would walk into maintenance control, they would go, could you send the real pilot down? We've got to, so. Flight plan continuing, collaborate with industry educators. We like to stay certainly very, very involved with those aerospace industry companies because it's very exciting what they're doing. We were just talking a little bit about the new CCA program, the Collaborative Combat Aircraft. We got a strong relationship with General Atomics. Lyndon Blue. This is Lyndon Blue. Don't take this the wrong way because I tell Lyndon Blue the senior. I call the young Lyndon, which is Neil's son. Neil named his son after his brother Lyndon, and so I call him Lyndon the Lesser, and as a joke. And Dave, are doing a great job over there. And this new program, where you'll hear swarms, collaborative, the collaboration of aircraft where somebody goes out with a manned aircraft and they've got 2, 3, or 4 additional unmanned aircraft with them that are providing their flight services. And it's going to be pretty cool to see that mature. The other company involved heavily is Anduril, and you'll hear them. And we're hoping that as we continue necking it down, that our team, General Atomics, Dave Alexander, the president, and Lyndon the Lesser as the CEO, are doing a great job. And summer camps are going well. Don't drive in our parking lot right now very fast. Okay, we've got little kids being dropped off every morning and every afternoon. And it's really a treat for me because I'll come out, I'll see parents dropping their kids off, picking them up, and I'll go up, tap on the window, and put the window down, like, who are you? Kind of thing. And I say, hey, my name is Jim Kidderake. I'm the president of the museum. How is your kid enjoying camp? Because I can't go into the classroom and say that. And I don't really get necessarily feedback from our teachers other than it's going great, right? And so to a person, I will tell you, there are people in our region, in our community, that are excited about what organizations like us are doing, because I think there are other organizations doing the same thing. So we're just trying to do our part, and hit that, that press button, that says go for kids, because they're going to grow up soon and they grow up fast. How many people have kids, and you go, my God, how did my daughter turn 50? That kind of thing. What do we need? It's like every other organization, it's a time, talent, treasure. Certainly, I will tell you some of the challenges with funding donations, because remember, about 86% of all giving comes from people. It doesn't come from corporations. It's people making a decision. We always call it a donation, okay, or we call it a gift, but really it's an investment where someone says, I want to invest in what they're doing to better our kids, our future, our nation. And that's what we try to represent, because right now, as you would imagine, a lot of money has been going to homeless, and it's been distracted for some window of time. And so the fundraising side of the house is a little tougher than it's been in previous years. Once again, because funding, especially even the politically sponsored funding, is going other directions. So what do? We've actually got our third Da Vinci exhibit in the museum right now. I told our team years ago, I said, Da Vinci kind of has his own brand. Okay, so if somebody hears the name Da Vinci, they think they should go and they should take their kids or their grandkids. And so that's pretty exciting. So we've got Da Vinci's First Flight is with us today, but you can see some of the exhibits and some of the things we do. We brought in the Lockheed Vega that was used in the movie Amelia. And I will tell you that I'm very fortunate to have friends and people I know that will occasionally call me up on the phone and say, Slug, I don't know what this is about, but I'm hearing rumblings. This is how we got the Horton 229, the first tailless airplane, okay, which we have the only full-size Horton 229 in the world. This was Rick Ludwig, okay, Wiggs, calls me up and says, Slug, I just don't know. He said, what do you want to do? I said, let's take it, okay, because half the time, don't hesitate, just take it and we'll make it work. It's hanging in the museum. It came with a 1-hour television show that National Geographic did, as National Geographic and Northrop Grumman built this airplane. But it's terribly historic because it was really the first attempt at what they believed would be a stealth airplane. Okay, because remember, it's all about RCS and making sure the radar doesn't go back to its source and all that kind of stuff. And so this is a tailless airplane, ailerons, really very cool. It had ME-262 engines. And so they actually put it on a stick, shot that early first generation English radar against it, and found out it did pretty good, but it still wasn't totally stealthy because they hadn't incorporated all the what I call the bounce technology, which sends the signal somewhere else. And because they were trying weird things. They were trying to put charcoal in the glue, because it's a wooden airplane originally as built, just to see if it would absorb the radar, if you can imagine that. You can imagine the first guy that briefed that. I'm thinking charcoal in the glue, and I could just see that one, as a JO. Doing Da Vinci, that was one of the second ones, the Blue Angel Hornet that we brought in, a collaboration we do with Boeing. Once again, very exciting to upgrade our presentation of the 3D 4D theater. We have now 3 animatronics. We have Charles Lindbergh at the front. We have Amelia Earhart, and we have one of the Tuskegee Airmen, Ben Davis. I keep going too fast for myself. And so our goal is 5. Next one we want to do is space. It's amazing how, albeit animatronic technology has gotten better, but it's still old technology, but how engaging something that talks and moves in front of you does. And so, like I said, let's say, to our team, let's pick out 5 that we can place around the museum. And it's amazing to see how people respond to that. Digitizing, we've been digitizing now for years. We're the leader probably in the country of digitizing photos and movies. And, we've got over 3 million photos now digitized. So for the researchers that are looking at writing books, we're starting to get into movies. There is just an amazing history in all of those that if we don't digitize them with others, by the way, we'll lose those for good. Tomcat project, I'm figuring out how to pull the seat art off. I may do it at midnight, 2 a.m. It's time to pull the seat art off. It's been there a little bit longer than anticipated. and put the Tomcat that was used, like I said, in the second movie out there, and just kind of represent San Diego, because the Tomcat started its history right here, certainly in San Diego. When I was in VF 126, 124 was right next to us, and just an exciting window of time when they took off on Enterprise, for that first cruise many years ago in VF 1 and 2. This is something that I wrote in. I do a short business plan every year when I present the budget, which, as you would imagine, our fiscal year is 1 July to 30 June. And this was back in 2007, 2008. Remember when the economy turned upside down? I told our team this. I said, there are times in your life that you simply have to work a little harder. Okay, you have to get out there amongst them, be at the top of your game, be good at what you do. Okay, be good street fighters. Now, there's a story about the Street Fighter comment, and certainly connected to your community. I'll go back to the Street Fighter. Our goals during COVID was no layoffs. Now, I will tell you, there were organizations in that park that just decimated their team, their staff. Okay, and I said, we can't do that. We can't let them down. We laid off no one during COVID. Okay, they all got to keep their jobs. They all got a paycheck. It was tough, but it was something that simply had to be done. And our diversity is through excellence. Okay, our number one goal is excellence. The diversity is just going to naturally happen because, if we don't care what they are, if they're really good at what they do, and we'll help train them to be good. So the Street Fighter term is that I had a board member who, at a board meeting, I shouldn't tell this story actually, but I won't give the name. He raised his hand. He said, I kind of took offense to the term Street Fighter. Okay. And, of course, I'm sitting there going, well, okay. He said, well, I looked it up. I Googled it. It says thug. And I said, well, we're not thugs. We didn't mean it that way, that we're going to go out and be street fighters, really. And, of course, and so then I had, because, there's kind of those moments of silence in a big, board meeting. And then one of our guys, one of our board members, Tracy Trent, I'll never forget, who used to work for SAIC, he said, when I was at SAIC, we considered all of ourselves to be good street fighters, and we were damn proud of it. Well, let me tell you, that just changed the tone in the room. So just so you know, the Air and Space Museum is going to have lots of street fighters. We're not going to forget that. Okay, so I put this slide up because when I needed to make a change, this is one of those, that, you're out there almost trolling. And we brought in a Star Trek exhibit. This has got to be 16 or 17 years ago now. So how many people remember our Star Trek exhibit? Good, okay. I had 5 board members quit when we made that decision. Now, you can imagine, I would tell you now that it was probably time for them to leave. But it was still a surprise. And so the only thing I could come back later on is we had a 54% increase in attendance. So it was something we needed to do to change us up, okay, so people would look our direction when they were looking for a high quality experience. Okay, so this is a presentation that I created because it was time. I actually created the core of this about 2 years ago. Is this the one I gave, Lee? Okay, I gave the other one. Okay. And anyway, so Balboa Park is complicated. That's all I can tell you. It's a beast. It's, we talk about it as our crown jewel in San Diego. Let's go to Balboa Park. Well, it's got some cracks there. This is just kind of what I'm going to talk about. Like I said, I'm going to go through pretty quickly. This is current perceptions. People talk about it. San Diego's jewel. It's a community regional resource. Athletics. We got the golf course. We got all the cultural, science, and arts organizations. Kind of a Smithsonian of the West. Very historic. The 2 main expositions, 1915, 35, 36, when our building was built. The architecture and all that stuff, a place for inner San Diego. But you can see, I said, a complex challenge. Here's the reality of what the park is today, unfortunately. Okay, it's got a very old and tired appearance, needs stucco, needs paint, needs a whole bunch of stuff. You can imagine if you have a building built in 1935, the toilets need to be tended to, any number of things. And I'll say RG, who probably comes down here more than, to us more than anybody, can tell you that it's tough keeping up the building itself. Homeless refuge. I would not let any of the ladies here walk through Balboa Park after dark. Okay, it's unsafe. My buddy over at the Old Globe, Tim Shields, says after midnight it's very similar to the Old West, and or I think he said the Wild West. Safety perception, day night, mission, purpose, conflicts, too many stakeholders. We have all these perceived owners, and I'll give you the list here in just a second. But you can imagine, we have legitimate day-to-day skin in the game, meaning that what they do can affect our attendance. It can affect people who get to visit us, the access, the ingress, the egress. Plaza de Panama, I was on the Plaza de Panama committee with Irwin. I can tell you what canceled it. Irwin Jacobs is truly a gentleman. He took on the project. I was the chair of the subcommittee on fundraising for the project, and we made it was very litigious over many years. And some of you remember it popping up, and I took a team over, got Irwin and Joan. Joan was getting to be the tougher one to get her to re-engage, and got them re-engaged in 2015 after it came out of the California Supreme Court. And then we were in the office when they, had the 3 bids. This is now later on, and we were in with a particular politician. I won't mention his name because I'm going to stay apolitical, right, Tom? And this guy was rude to Irwin Jacobs, and Irwin was there to ask one thing. The lowest bid was $81.5 million. Okay, so our limit was 75. As you imagine, we had a threshold that was still in effect, even though it had just been working all these years. So Irwin said, I will promise you to get a few of these aesthetics done, but if we could focus on, if you remember, the bypass bridge and the Oregon Pavilion parking structure, if we could just do those, get those done, I will personally guarantee. And this guy, well, I don't know if I can do that, because he was listening to all the wrong people in Balboa Park. So after a while, like I said, he was rude to Irwin, and Irwin said these words. He says, well, I guess we're done here. And I'm telling you, it just, within 2 weeks, the organization was gone. Balboa Park, the Plaza de Panama project is probably one of the greatest tragedies of the park ever in its history, because it was going to refocus significant dollars on Balboa Park. And it was just going to be the beginning. It's like I said, it's very, very unfortunate. It told many of the philanthropists in our community, you may not want to do anything in Balboa Park, and you might not want to do anything with the city of San Diego. And so that's continues to hurt us. You can see I have no feelings on the topic. We'll hear the park is not activated. We got this open space. They removed 144 parking spots directly in front of our building, which in the Palisades. We are suffering we don't have enough parking, but they don't understand that 7 days a week, when we open our doors at 10 o'clock, we activate that park. Yes, ma'am. The which club? Uh-huh. Yep, I know what you mean. Well, we're going to get into that here in just a minute, but you're absolutely right, because I was telling somebody a little bit earlier, the free day that we have once a month, it's not going to be free anymore. Okay, if they start paying for parking, okay, we'll be free. Okay, but you're going to be paying for parking. So, I've met with the mayor, I've met with the mobility team, I met with the climate action team, and I can't really give a viewpoint, but it's very sad. That's what I can tell you. It's very sad. Anyway, so you can see the number of people who visit Balboa Park is to attend, one of the organizations that is there every day. We do 85 to 90 events a year, at the museum, where someone uses us as their stage. public spaces and a regional park system. The challenge you have is that there are three primary regional parks, but the really two of the three are Balboa Park and Mission Bay Park. I used to produce the boat races. I'm on their board now, but for 8.5 years, I was their director. And most of you wouldn't know, but Mission Bay Park was actually built, okay, to do things like unlimited hydroplane racing. The curvature of the beach on Ski Beach, matching the curve on Fiesta Island, was to accommodate a 2.5-mile unlimited hydroplane race course. And it's the fastest race course in the world. And it was done with the intent, with the master plan of 1958 for Mission Bay. It was done with the intent of attracting world-class powerboat competition. Now, I will tell you, these guys were a lot smarter than at least me, not you guys, as that they put it in the city municipal code. So there's an allowance for up to 10 days of unmuffled powerboat racing annually and 4 additional days for unlimited. That's the only thing that has protected us to continue those kinds of initiatives that caused them to initiate a $200 million bond. So Mission Bay Park was completed in 1964, like we see it today, $200 million bond paid for by commercially leasing 25% of the park. And of course, once they paid it back, money kept, going in to improve the park until, like all good city councils, they realized maybe that money should be coming to the general fund. Okay, then you don't know where it gets spent. Anyway, so parks have a capacity. We are over the capacity of what Balboa Park can handle, especially on Saturday, Sunday, Friday. Okay, I always tell some of these events, why don't you come in Monday morning and do an event? They go, we can't come then. Nobody will come. So, and that's our point. So this is right out of the city's website. Okay, and they have lots more. Okay, because remember, they define community parks, neighborhood parks, all this kind of stuff. And it's the realization that I believe now, if you live within 2 miles of, we'll take Balboa Park, you should have no allowed opinion of what goes on in that park, because it's a regional park. It's not your neighborhood park. Okay, it has different purposes to it. And if you look at Balboa Park, and especially Mission Bay Park, they were built like multi-purpose gymnasiums with great specificity of purpose. Remember Sail Bay, Sail Bay, you can't have a motorized powerboat, blah, blah, during certain hours of the day. So it was done to benefit not just us, okay, but certainly that out-of-town tourist as well as the in-town tourist. Moratoriums, these are Memorial Day to Labor Day, when you can't hold special events in some of the areas, except those defined by the city, which basically are all the special events that you would normally not want to see in the park. Park ownership. So this slide, I show it because when people talk about owners and power and all that stuff, this is what it takes. This is all the perceived owners. You can see as it goes down, the Committee of 100, a bunch of volunteers, Soho, Save Our Heritage Organization, the zoo, specific people, the city. The city, of course, is the gorilla in the park, besides the zoo, and they have all of the power to very, very autocratically initiate what you'll see in a final slide. The solution about park activation. The 1989 master plan, 1991, 92 precise plan, these have become more handcuffs. I've said publicly that if you went back to the 1915 gang and the 1935-36 gang and said, were you guys done? Were you never going to make improvements to the park again? What do you think their answer would be? I think it would be, it's your turn, okay? It's up to us. We should have that vision of the future, okay, to build on what they created. Okay, so nothing can stay the same. And if we, because remember when our building was built, it was used for about a year and a half or so by Ford for the 35-36 exposition. And if you excuse the metaphor, they drove away from it. When we came in 1978 after the fire burned down the old electric building, the building was a derelict. It was for anybody that knew that building, it was gone. Okay, so we, not me, but a wonderful team of people brought that back And I looked at my charter as making it better every day until I leave. Because I am trying to figure out, when do I leave? What, Tim, come on. Well, no, I have a board, okay, that says, they told me about a year ago, said, could you give us 2 years notice? And I go, 2 years notice? I mean, gee, I don't have 2 years notice, to go on vacation, kind of thing. So what it takes, strong leadership, certainly, a common vision, which we don't have, unfortunately, politically, without taking a position one way or the other, Tom. A willingness to look at the entire region, okay? And we got to exercise just a lot of good old fashioned common sense, which I don't think is being used all. So now further band-aids. So this is where you get into what I call the cumulative effects, okay? Because what you have heard about mostly is what? Paid parking, okay? How many people have been on Park Boulevard lately? They put a bus lane, okay? Well, you can count the buses in a day. It's like 8 or 10 and of course, the buses all ride full, okay? Because we all count the people that are on board. And then we have the bike lanes, because when I did something on this, I called up the San Diego Police Department and talked to the traffic division, their safety guy, and said, would you join me on the corner of President's Way and Park Boulevard? He said, sure. So he got there. I said, would you get in my car? Would you take a drive? Sure. So we drove down towards City College, if you know where I am, on Park Boulevard. And I wanted to do a U-turn. I said, I'm going to make a U-turn here. Is that okay? He said, don't worry, I got a badge. Okay. So this is the conversation. So we did the U-turn, drove up past the zoo, up by Upus, and came back down to the Air and Space Museum. And he said, who did this? So then I knew for sure that these mobility teamers and, Climate Act, they didn't go to the police department and give it the safety check, right? Now, you guys, as my XOs and COs and my leaders, when I was a young JO, would have said, well, Jim, why didn't you do that? Okay. And so, because the guy said, let me do kind of an under the sheets check of who did this and where's it coming from. And he came back 3 weeks later, said, it's all political, all politics. It has nothing to do with rational, thought or what we should be doing. So now what you did is you reduced the capacity of Park Boulevard by 50%. So now if congestion was 25 cars, it's 12 and a half cars. I don't know who's going to drive the half. But if it's 50, it's 25. Well, so sometimes from the back of our building on a Saturday, it'll take 45 minutes to an hour just to get to Park Boulevard. You're not out of the park. And so what I see every day, because when I take that turn off of President's onto Park towards City College, okay, I'm in the bus lane, right? So what am I supposed to do? Move over one lane left. The cars are all at that light, okay? They're all in the left lane. So I have to try to get over to where they are. And most of the cars are trying to move into the bus lane to cross through the bus lane to go on 163 North, okay? We had an accident like 3 nights ago, the same thing, people swapping spots. And everybody, the police department included, and the city park staff, remember, this is political, knows that it's unsafe. Okay, so I've given you enough of. And I got to talk about the bike lane and the bike lane light. Okay, so I live East County, so when I drive down, there's a bike lane and it's got its own little light and it turns red. Okay, with the car lanes turn red, and then it goes green. Okay, now there aren't any bikes there that move. Okay, but it's fun to watch. Then I see it go amber. I see it go red, and then the car lights go green, and I get to go. So I get to go through the experience of watching the bike lane light every day, which is really a lot of fun. Palisades parking, the city violated their own master plan. Okay, when they took it out, now it's a roller rink. Okay, if you've ever seen that spot, and it's right in between the Auto Museum, what is Comic-Con, the gymnasium, and us. Restrooms, you don't want to go into any of the restrooms in Balboa Park unless you have a hazmat suit on. Infrastructure projects, somewhere it's $500 million plus of deferred maintenance in the park today. And it could be $1 billion. governance attacks, Forever Bubble Apartments, an organization. Now you hear about the Starlight Theater. How many people heard the Starlight Theater on the news? You think there's parking for them? There's not. We're already short of parking. Like I said, we need probably, I'll conservatively say 2,500. We need 5,000 parking spots because of the Saturday and Sunday. Now you can imagine, this is graduation time, right? You can imagine all the graduation ceremonies that occur in the Oregon Pavilion. Well, by the way, not only do they take all the parking, and I have nothing against the graduation happening there, but now they're going to have to pay for parking potentially. Okay, I was telling my girlfriend that I see a lot of young women who have a brand new baby. They're there to exercise together in the park. They come in, they've got their strollers and their kids, and this is kind of who we are. Now they're going to have to pay for parking just to come in and do that kind of stuff. So it has a real downside to it. And of course, that free day we do a month, as I said, isn't going to be free anymore. Starlight Theater, paid parking. I always say, what next? Locusts. So, and who knows? So there you go.